Hello, Algebra 1. We are continuing with the unit that I call the big picture of algebra, which focuses on translating back and forth between different forms of describing patterns. And today we're going to talk about how to translate from the equation form to the graph form. And in class today, first we went over last night's homework, which was all about translating from a table to an equation. Now, as I say, and in class today we began to talk about going from that equation to a graph. But first, let's make sure that we remember what we did do today. So here you can see on screen in the black typed form the tables, and on the left you see what we did in class today, turning the table about the dog walker situation into an equation, into this equation here, y equals 3x plus 1. And just to remind you, here are all the different tables that we looked at today, including the last one, which was about the impact of studying for chemistry on how many mistakes we make on an exam. And in this case, for this table, we ended up saying that the equation was y equals negative 4.5x plus 23. Okay, so that's what we did in class. Now, going from those equations to graphs. Well, first of all, I said, but we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it in this video, that the left column is the x values, the right column is the y values. This is going to become more and more important as we go along, but I just want to at least have it on screen to remind you of this. And we said the form, or the general form for an equation, for a linear equation, is y equals mx plus b. This is something you've learned before. And we said that in order to go from table to equation, we really just need two pieces of information, the m and the b. And we said m can be called rate of change, but it also goes by some other names like slope and rise over run. Likewise, b can be called the starting amount. I don't know if you just saw the warning that came on screen, but I had to pause because my power cord had become unplugged and it was saying that I needed to put that back in. So I was starting to say that b can be called the starting amount. Okay, so that starting amount, we've talked a good bit in class, happens when this x value, when the value in this left column is 0. And remember, we've talked a lot about in class about the fact that often a table won't show 0 as an amount, and so you have to figure out what the y value is when x is 0, and that can take a bit of work. But the first thing you do is you find out this rate of change, this m, or slope, or rise over run. And notice here, and we've talked about this a good bit in class, that every time you move from one level to another, you keep going up 3 in terms of the dollars, plus 3. So that's it, that's your rate of change. As for this starting amount over here in green, well, like I said, you got to go back to stage 0, where hours worked is 0, which means you go backwards from 4, which means you subtract 3 instead of adding 3. So $4 minus 3 is $1. And that's what you plug in here. And there you are. You have your equation, y equals 3x plus 1, and that is the equation for this table. Now it's time to graph. Graphing is a matter of making use of just those same two pieces of information. You just need to know a starting amount. In this case, when you're graphing, it's a starting place. And this, the rate of change, which now really makes use of these blue ways of saying it, rise over run. Let's start with our starting place of 1. Remember, we've said that this is always on the y-axis, and specifically it's the y-intercept. It's where your line is going to get intercepted by the y-line. So put it in at 1, just like it says here. And then, rise over run is going to be 3. Well, notice rise over run is a fraction. How do I make 3 a fraction? I call it 3 over 1. And listen to the words I just said, 3 over 1. Well, that means I'm going to rise 3 and go over 1. And we've talked about the idea that when these are positives, the rise, positive goes up, negative goes down. The run, positive goes to the right, negative goes to the left. These are both positive, so I go up and over. I make there, I draw my line through it, clean this up a bit. This equation, y equals 3x plus 1, that is the graph for it. That's all there is to it. Let's do one more, a little more quickly, just to make sure you have it. The hardest, maybe, or certainly the last of the tables that we looked at was this one, how hours studied impacted how many mistakes we made when we were studying for chemistry. And we said that the rate of change was negative 4.5. We go down 4.5 each time, or 4.5 each time. And if we went back to stage 0, if we hadn't studied at all, we would have made 23 mistakes. So plug those two numbers in, negative 4.5 for the rate of change and 23 for the starting amount. Now we graph it. Well, the starting amount 23 is not going to fit on this piece of graph paper that I have here. So I'm going to change the units. I'm going to change the scale on the graph. I'm going to make every space 2 units instead of 1. So 5 becomes 10 and 10 becomes 20. Even then, I'm not going to be able to fit 23, so I got to add a bit more space up here at the top. So I go up to 24, and that means 23 appears right here where I've made this green dot. Now from there, I've got to go down. Remember, rise, if it's a negative, you go down 4.5 spaces. That's roughly there, roughly where that yellow spot is. And then the run, well, this negative 4.5 over positive 1, well, positive, I still go to the right one. And I know this is small enough now, it's hard to see exactly how to graph this. So let's draw some points in there to make it a little clearer. There's my point at the bottom right, and there's my point at the top left. Draw a line through it. Now let's clean this up just a bit. My equation, y equals negative 4.5x plus 23, which is my equation for this chemistry study situation, can be represented in a graph with this black line. That's the end of the video lesson. If you have any more questions about this, don't hesitate to come into class, but I'm hoping this is enough to get you able to complete the homework assignment tonight.